You never, these days, you can't tell. Okay, so anyway, we're gonna go back here to where we were, and this is where we kind of ended, was with the age of Augustus, and Augustus, who was Octavian, who was the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar's grandson, Caesar's great nephew. And Octavian, after he figures out a way to manipulate his way into power without looking like he wants power, that's the key. Because what he saw was Julius Caesar had gotten power, but the people knew that Caesar craved it. So now Octavian's going to be able to actually act as if he doesn't want the power, which is, it's going to be a little better to give the power to someone who doesn't seem as if they're power hungry. So anyway, they even give him the title Augustus, the revered one. And I think we probably ended on the fact that he calls himself Princeps as the first citizen, the leader, but we consider him, most historians consider him the first emperor. Okay, because of the things he does, the way he centralizes the government around himself, the way he removes a lot of the powers of the republic, even while giving people the illusion that there is still a republic active. Okay, now Augustus, or Octavian, after 27, thing about this guy is he is going to have a long, long reign from 27 BC to 14 AD. He's going to be in power. And that means that he's going to grow old in power. So as Augustus, as he has himself represented in the ancient world in Augustus' time, you're going to have your leaders represented in statues and engravings and all kinds of stuff. Maybe even on the money, they're going to have the coinage with his face on it. And he always has himself portrayed as a young man about 30-ish with a full head of hair. And he's an old man. I can't remember how old he was when he died. I should be able to know that. But he's an old man when he dies, and he is constantly going to be portrayed as this young, virile, strong man, full head of hair when he's an older, bald man. Okay? Now, why might a leader portray himself as young forever, even though the people psychologically know, cognitively, they know he's getting older. They have to. They know he's been in power this long, so he's got to be getting older. Well, what's his game here with that? Well, it's easy if you think about it, right? What's he trying to do?
Well, if you're trying to portray yourself as a god, and gods don't age sometimes, so just trying to look young forever.
Portray yourself as larger than, well, let's put it this way to start with. You and me, are we likely to run into a president of the United States just out there? And no, probably not. Are we likely to run into a mayor or somebody? Yeah. Now, Octavian, in the absence of CNN and news, TV, internet, everything, the only time people are going to see him is if they have worked in his bureaucracy in some way, shape, or form, or if they're another head of state or a member of the Senate. People are going to encounter him formally, but you're not just going to know who Octavian is and what he looks like. So he uses that to his advantage too, because what he's trying to portray is the same thing that FDR tried to portray when FDR was president and we entered World War II, and even before that as president, FDR had polio and he was in a wheelchair. He did not want the American people to know that he was in a wheelchair. Because why?
He is weak.
Okay, you want to portray yourself as a leader as very strong. Okay, so Octavian or Augustus thinks that if he always looks young and strong and all this stuff, people are going to trust him more. They're not going to see him. They're not going to. So psychologically, what this does is that it doesn't convince you that he's still a young man, but it messes with your mind a little bit because you have no idea what he really looks like. FDR, same thing. There's tons of pictures that I have of FDR. He looks like he's standing. He's actually leaning on a fence or on some kind of something. He looks like he's just standing on his own. And that's not, I mean, they would go to all kinds of extent to make sure that FDR was not represented in a wheelchair, which a few years ago, this became a controversy because somewhere was in Washington DC, they were trying to put a statue of FDR in the wheelchair. And Americans with disabilities and everyone's like, yes, that's a great thing, we need to do that. And historically we say, well, considering the fact that he didn't want you to do that, maybe you should respect his wishes. So there was a controversy about that. Yeah.
Was he, like you said, he was sickly when he was younger? Was he always sickly?
He grew up and he kind of, I mean, he wasn't ever, maybe he wasn't like the Theodore Roosevelt, who was a sickly young man and then started building himself up and then was never sick again. But he was not sickly most of the time as a man. I mean, he had, again, he had a long life and he was able to rule quite powerfully. He had a very strong hand because he's going to rein in the Senate without them even knowing they're being reined in. So yeah, he's going to actually grow up and get out of most of that. That TR himself, Theodore Roosevelt, just completely, when he grew up, I mean, he became a literal cowboy and everything else. Octavian's not going to go that far, but he's not going to be, really, really sickly all of his life. Now, the Pax Romana, you need to know what the Pax Romana is, and you need to know what it stands for. Pax Romana, Pax means peace, right? Pax is peace in Latin. So we've got the peace of Rome, if we literally translate it. So the Pax Romana is a very long period of time. And it's actually from the end of the Republic, which would be 27, if we're going to get all specific. We say when Augustus really becomes Augustus. Okay, and then all the way to the end of Marcus Aurelius' reign, a very powerful emperor, Marcus Aurelius, in some ways, but in other ways, I mean, he's just a great poet and philosopher. So it's going to be for about 200 years, we're going to have the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. Now, does that mean that there's no wars? Does that mean that it really is a peaceful time? Well, not exactly. Because the peace of Rome means that they did have wars outside of Rome, okay? Out of their territory, they still had wars, but there were no major invasions of Rome, okay? So it's like us right now. Are we at peace right now?
No.
Not really. I mean, we're not in a declared war since since we declared in 1941, and it ended in 1945. The United States has not been in a declared war, an official declared war. But are we at war? Well, I know quite a few people who are in Afghanistan right now who would say, oh yes, we are at war, and other places and so on. So we, in the United States right now, are sort of in, we could say it, we've had a very long period of peace as far as having a war on our soil since 1865. I mean, heck, same kind of idea. So in other words, they do have wars, they do have conflicts, but it does not come to their home soil. That's the difference, and we're in that situation at this moment. Okay. Now, there's not going to be any huge social problems. I mean, we had the Spartacus rebellions, for example, back in the 70s, BCE, where they were running wild for about 2.5 years, the escaped slaves. But the social problems also, we don't have as many of the issues between the plebs and the patricians, because remember, after the struggle of the orders from 494 up until about the 200s, things had sort of evened out, sort of, for the most part. So we have peace in that sense. Now, the Roman legal system, the 12 tables and their addendums, okay, 12 tables, the Roman legal system, is going to be vital in bringing the law, bringing order, bringing some sense of the government and its vast expanse of reach into your life to the provinces. And with that comes some sort of structure, okay? So the Roman legal system is going to be, well, it's going to be something that, remember we talked about if you were able to qualify for the free land that was for veterans and you were able to go and cultivate this land, you could just have it as long as you could fix it up and cultivate it. One of the things they required you to do if you moved over into these provinces, these colonies, is they would require you to model being a Roman citizen. Remember that? And part of that was you would represent the Roman legal system, okay? Not just the customs and the dress and all of that, but you would stand up as someone who worked within the legal system, okay? So that was part of the requirements for that land, as a matter of fact. Now, arts and culture, excuse me, arts and culture are going to flourish. The way I always explain that is probably a pretty easy way to understand it. Because if you're able to sit today in a history class, okay, you're sitting here probably, excuse me again, probably most things in your life are going, okay, might not be perfect, okay? You might have some issues. You might have money issues, relationship issues, parent issues if you're still at home, or something. But if you're able to sit in a class like this, talking about stuff that happened 2,000 years ago, your life is probably not at this very moment crumbling into pieces, hopefully. The reason I say that is, and that's not always the case, but the reason I say that is, if you have in your life, or if you have a culture where things are happening to the point of overwhelm, okay, like what had been going on as the republic was crumbling itself, you're going to have civil wars, you're going to have all these generals, and you're going to have all of the different problems between the classes and all of these things that were just happening. There was no time to worry about going out and making pretty pictures and writing pretty poetry on a large scale, okay? When things calm down, then you're going to see people doing things that are not going to help you immediately in that moment, okay? Knowing history will help you in a different way, but it's not going to help you feed your family tonight. Does that make sense? Okay. I have had homeless students living, one of them living in a car with children, and they, when something is that critical, you're not going to finish the semester usually, because sitting here again and talking about Julius Caesar or somebody, or Octavian, or who at Nero, that's not helping you go out and do what you need to do to get out of that situation. So again, I kind of use that little kind of micro, and then the macro is your civilization, if it's at peace, is going to be more likely to have people going and getting education, going out and doing things like painting, creating, you know, designing new things, and all of that, writing plays. So we're going to see the Romanization of the Western world. Now remember back when we talked about the Hellenistic age was the era that we saw the Hellenization of, or the spread of Greek culture through the Western world. So now the Romans are coming in, they're piggybacking off the Greeks, they're taking a lot of things from the Greeks, and they're doing the same thing, only we call this the Pax Romana. Now, what do they actually accomplish, though, in the Pax Romana? Surprisingly, I mean, they accomplished a lot during this period of time. 200 years in the perspective of history, 200 years is just a tiny little blip, okay? 200 years is a tiny little blip when it comes to history. Hang on. Okay. Okay. So the Roman cities are going to become a model all over the world. That's important. I mean, 200 years, again, not that long. Seems long to us because we're sitting here in linear time, but if you look back, you step back and you look at the timeline, that's not long. Now you also have the roads. The roads, the idea that they've probably gotten from the Etruscans, the Romans are going to build the best, absolutely structural roads in the ancient world. And we mentioned before, you still have parts of Europe where you can go and walk on sections of the Roman-built roads from 2,000 years ago. They did not build them to be temporary. They built them to last forever, and they've darn near done that. Okay, now you're gonna see them building aqueducts. We're talking about the Claudian aqueduct under Claudius. But the aqueducts are really important because you're able to bring water into the cities. Now, that's important because we know that we have to have water. That's why the earliest civilizations in the Western world, or what became the Western world, were in Egypt and Mesopotamia, right beside the water sources of the Nile and the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And in Rome, of course, by the Tiber River once we get to Rome. Now, you have to have water close to your city. It just has to happen. But once they figure out a way to really not pipe the water in, that's going to be, you did have pipes in ancient Greece. Remember, the Minoans had a series of pipes and running water. But the Romans, they do have somewhat. You have the Roman baths, you have some of that. They do have toilets at some point. But what they're going to do is they're going to start out here with these aqueducts. The aqueducts, and we'll see a picture of part of one when we get to the Claudian aqueducts, they look sort of like overpasses on a road in some ways, look like a bridge sort of, and they carry the water to the cities from far away. So in other words, you can expand your cities. You can build the cities further away from the water source, or you can make them larger as you go, okay? That's important because, well, I mean, obviously, if you're able to carry water up to 50, 55 miles away, I mean, that's from here to Louisville. You could expand a city from here to Louisville, okay, as far as the water goes, as far as just the necessity. Now, they're going to build a lot of these great public buildings. We saw the beginnings of some of these great public buildings already. We saw way back earlier than this, we saw them using marble back in the 100s, 160s, maybe 140s. They were using marble, but this is where they're going to use concrete for the first time. Okay, concrete, not nearly as expensive as marble, but marble was back in the days when they weren't taxing their citizens because they had so much money. Well, they're going to use concrete. You're going to have the Forum in Rome. You're going to have the area out there where all these great public buildings are. You're going to have this area, and you're going to have a lot of them created with marble, and then we're going to start to see great public buildings using concrete. Now, this right here, this next one, this professional civil service. Today, we kind of take that for granted, especially if you're military, family's military, you know anything about the military that you know. I mean, you kind of understand that living close to Fort Knox, you're going to hear people talk about civil service jobs. And in order to get a civil service job, you have to take a test and you have to qualify, and you qualify for different ranks and so on and so on. Well, anyway, in the United States, we had a lot of trouble getting that in place. We had about 30 years from the late 1860s to about the early 1900s where we could not get the government to agree to a civil service, okay, where we would have people who were actually qualified to do their jobs, where you would have to test to somehow show that you could do your job. We just couldn't get that through. Well, the Romans are going to do something very similar to this. Now, it's not going to be as far as you're going to take a test and you're going to have to score into this pay grade or this rank or whatever, but it is very structured, okay? Rome is, in so many ways, a very modern city, okay? In so many ways, very, very, very cosmopolitan. You're going to have people passing through Rome from everywhere. And one thing that they have the fantastic roads, so they have to have people out there dedicated, like the Department of Transportation, who are going to do the road repairs. That's civil service. You've got the Postal Service. Now, the Postal Service had been around in some form or another, basically message carriers, since we know of at least Darius I, back in the 500s in Persia. But this one, under Augustus, at least here early on and then a little bit later, the Postal Service is going to improve a little bit. You still can't go and send a handwritten letter in an envelope to your Aunt Sally in Portland or somewhere. You can't do that. But it's getting a little bit more it's getting a little bit more accurate. You send a message, it's probably gonna get there within a reasonable time. Now, you're also going to have the fire brigades and some sort of of a police force, sort of. You're gonna see that these two things sometimes are going to be privatized, which is kind of scary, because I told you the story about the guy that would have the houses burning, and he'd say, oh, you haven't paid your fire dues, and then he would buy the ruins of the house and then fix it up and sell it at a profit. So it's kind of scary, but they're getting somewhere, because eventually the fire brigades and the police officers are eventually going to work for the empire. Okay, you don't really have a real metropolitan police force in Europe, really, until the 1840s with London. You're going to have the peelers, which are today called the bobbies. So that's going to be much later. But that's a start right here. We have to start somewhere, and that's what we're doing back here in the ancient world. Now, Virgil's Aeneid was written sometime in the late BC, BCE period. And remember, Virgil, the great Roman poet, who was commissioned by the Emperor Augustus, as we call him, to write a great story that would rival Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Okay, so we have the story of Aeneas, which we've talked about plenty, right? Now we're getting into the fun stuff. We're getting into the first 5 emperors. Now I want you to use what I always say, your common sense on this, because sometimes people make a mistake on an exam, and sometimes people make mistakes just in terms of studying or just in terms of not paying attention or writing stuff down or whatever, but that's all on you. It's not on me. I can't force you. But anyway, you're going to have, because there's a lot more material than you think there is, you're going to have the Julio-Claudians. Now, Julio-Claudians, I want you to use your common sense about this, because if we have the Roman Empire going from, hang on, okay, the empire, we know the republic and stuff, the empire itself goes from 27 to 476-ish. We'll talk about why that's both important and not important when we get there again. But if the empire's doing this, okay, and I give you the first 5 emperors, which I'm going to do. You don't have to write this part down. This is just for your see if you're paying attention and figuring out anything. And if you're not, please don't waste your parents' money. Okay? The first 5 emperors, the Julio-Claudians. Okay, Julio-Claudians are Augustus. Okay, blah, 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 blah. And then we're going to get down here to number 5, and this is going to be Nero. Now, we'll fill these in here in a second. We've got a whole thing about it. But Nero is going to die in 68 AD. He's going to commit suicide. I sometimes have people that will, on an exam, one of the questions might be, name the last Roman emperor. And somebody will undoubtedly put Nero. And I'm like, you're not thinking. The empire ends when? 400 years after Nero's kicked it, okay? What you're doing is, in that case, you're memorizing the first 5 emperors. You're not understanding the context. You're not, in other words, spending enough time with the material to understand the context of it all. Because Nero's going to die 68 AD. The empire is going to roll on. We are not going to talk about all those emperors, because this is not a course in nothing but Rome. Okay? What we're going to do is we have to talk about the first 5 emperors as a unit. We kind of have to talk about these 5 together because of the reasons I'm about to give you, because their relationships, the way they handled government, and so on. But keep in mind, okay, there's going to be a lot of emperors that we simply don't talk about because we can't. So the Julio-Claudians are these guys. Don't write this down, because each one of them is going to have their own slides here in just a minute. But there's Octavian again, dies in 14. There's Tiberius, 14 to 37. Caligula, goodness gracious. Caligula, there he is. Claudius, 41 to 54. And then Nero. So we have the first 5 of these emperors. Now, Augustus or Octavian or Caesar Augustus, whoever you want to call this dude, he is probably going to be, even with his faults, he's going to be the most effective of these leaders. Now, I have to warn you that the bar is not set that high when we're talking about the Julio-Claudians. The bar is not that high. Augustus was a great emperor in many ways. I told you, I studied in one of my classes, the age of Augustus, the 27 to 14, and all the things that we ended probably last time on, talking about how he regulated things like adultery and how he regulated the young women marrying or at least having children with the Roman legions, the strong men, and all that type of thing. He also with Augustus, I think I forgot to tell you this, I don't remember saying it, but Augustus was also ruling at a time where there was a shortage of men. Okay, there was a shortage of men. And so that was one reason that he was out there actively encouraging people to have more children. They needed more boys, okay? They needed more men. So anyway, you've got Octavian living, a pretty good long life, but he's not going to live forever. Now, in 14 AD, he's going to die, and in his lifetime, he's accomplished many things. He's given us really a brand new form of government. Now, keep in mind, the Roman people don't admit it. They don't admit that he's running an empire. They think, or they say at least, they pay lip service to the fact that they're still in a republic. But here's what's going on, okay? The Julio-Claudians, the reason that we have to focus on them as a unit is, we'll come back to that, is because they are all somehow connected, okay? So one way they're connected is the members, this dynasty or this family, comes from a merging of 2 of the early patrician families, okay? The Julian and the Claudian, this is going to be supposedly 2 of the founders of Rome. You have the founding families of Rome, and those are going to always and forever be the nobility of Rome, okay? So the Julio-Claudians, so they're all somehow in this from their lineage, okay? So they have an impressive ancestry, again, supposedly all the way back to the founding of Rome. Now, just like today, you might hear people, I sometimes hear it in I don't know, old TV shows I watch or something, but you'll have people talk about, well, my family came over on the Mayflower or something like that. So this is kind of that attitude that these people are going to have. These 5 guys are related somehow through blood, marriage, and adoption, sometimes more than one of the above, okay? Blood, marriage, and adoption. And the Julio-Claudians are founded by Augustus. We don't count Julius Caesar as one of these guys, because first of all, we don't count him as an actual emperor. Second of all, I mean, Julius Caesar is not going to be, he's not going to be in the position of pretending we still have a republic, and he's going to veer off in many ways that the Julio-Claudians don't. But so we look at this and we say, okay, this section of imperial Rome, called the Julio-Claudian Empire for that moment, at least we label it that in retrospect, was founded by Augustus. Because remember, Augustus was the son of Julius Caesar's, or the grandson rather, of Julius Caesar's sister. So the lineage was, if it was through Julius Caesar's sister, his lineage was through her husband, right? And then it goes through the men. So the fact that she was Julius Caesar's sister did not matter. But the fact that Caesar adopted him made him a Julian. Does that make sense? Okay, wouldn't have gone through the female line. So he became a Julian at that point. Now, here's what these 5 guys at least try to make people think they're doing. Okay, I have it up there as if it's a fact, but okay. They pretend to, sometimes, to maintain the ideas that they're in a republic. And a couple of ways they do that is they attempt to involve the Senate. Now, do they really involve the Senate? This is called an illusion. This is some smoke and mirrors they play. They let, for the most part, they let the senators have their say. And then these guys are gonna do whatever they wanna do after that, okay? They might listen to the senators, but they probably will go in one ear and out the other, so to speak. So they maintain, at least in the eyes of the people for a while, the Republican ideas and ideals, things they're striving for, and wish to involve the Senate and other Roman aristocrats in the government. Or at least, again, that was the idea. We have peace and prosperity. Now remember, that's going to be more than just during the Julio-Claudians, because the Julio-Claudians end in 68, but the Pax Romana and the peace and prosperity is going to go on until 180, much later. So they're going to be able to keep their peace, prosperity, and so on, the provinces, and foreign policy. Okay, now, in foreign policy, this is going to be other territories that they might maybe want to conquer. They might be thinking about conquest, or there might just be some conflict between the two groups. And so under Augustus and Tiberius especially, we're going to see a lot of diplomacy, which means we're going to have leaders sit down, or representatives of leaders sit down and talk about ways to avoid war. Okay, so after Augustus and Tiberius, I mean, you're going to have Caligula and Claudius and Nero, who are not going to be quite as skilled in diplomacy. And we're going to hear, you know, Tiberius is, he's going to have a lot of faults too when it comes to that, but still yet he relies more on preventing military force than using it. Okay, even with his problems that he has, and they are quite a few. Okay, so Tiberius. Now, what do we want to know about Tiberius? Well, Tiberius is the stepson of Augustus. Okay, so Augustus is going to marry Tiberius's mother. Okay, Tiberius never really wants to be emperor. Tiberius does not show any interest in being emperor. Tiberius is not even thinking that he could possibly be in the lineage of empire. Okay, he's not going to be in the dynasty. He's the stepson. It's going to go through the actual family name, or the family succession and lineage. So he's not too worried about being an emperor, but life has other ideas for him. Okay, and first of all, he was married already. He had a wife named, what was her name? Vespania, I think, something like that. Started with a V. He had a wife that he seemed to really get along with and he loved. And his stepfather, Augustus, told him at some point, well, you know, I don't really like your wife. You need to divorce her and you need to marry my daughter, Julia. And Tiberius was not happy about that. He actually, he did it. I mean, that's, you know, that's Augustus and he's telling you to do it. And he has quite a bit of power, and he's also your stepfather, and also he can make your life pretty rough. So he divorces his wife who he loves and marries Augustus's daughter Julia. Now it starts out, their marriage is okay at first. But after a time, the story goes that Tiberius ran back to Vespania and like begged her forgiveness for leaving her. Well, he wasn't able to actually go back to her. He still had to deal with Julia. But there's a story that, you know, and Vespania, she just kind of rejected him. She's like, sorry about your luck, all right? It probably felt really good to her, didn't it? She's like, sorry, Tiberius, you had your chance. Well, he ends up in a terrible marriage with Julia as a little time goes on. Turns out that she's pretty much, how can I say this? I can't say it the same way I would say it if I were talking about states. Okay, he finds out eventually that she's pretty much sleeping with all the men in the Roman Empire. Okay, it sounds a little extreme, but let's just say she's out constantly flaunting the fact that she is doing whatever she wants, with whomever she wants, whenever she wants. That can't make him happy, okay? He's actually quite miserable in this marriage. First wife won't take him back. His stepfather's threatening him with all of that. Well, anyway, to move along. Now, when I say her, oh, I just realized that looks confusing. Her sons, meaning, let's see, yeah, because she was married to Agrippa, okay. So her sons, meaning Julia, okay. Julia's sons, Lucius and Gaius, are actually the next men in line, or boys, in line to inherit the throne from Augustus when he dies, okay, Julia. So it's going through the daughter, but what happened was Augustus actually adopted Gaius and Lucius as his heirs. Now, why didn't he just adopt the oldest of the two, or the older of the two? It's an easy answer in the ancient world. What if one dies? Because it's quite likely that one probably will die. So he's going to adopt both of them, okay? So Gaius and Lucius are next in line. He's grooming both of them, just in case. From the time they're young, he's grooming them to grow up and take over. Now, Octavian lives, again, pretty long life, and things happen. Things happen as it goes. Now, here, Tiberius. Somewhere around 6 or so BC, BCE, Tiberius is in line to get control of an army over in the east. Now, the thing about Tiberius is he had been a good general, a powerful general, and Augustus was really pushing. I think some of these slides are going to be out of order now that I think about it, so sorry. I will fix them as soon as possible, but I just realized I think some of them may be out of order. Anyway, so he is going to be a great general. He had Imperium, and every time he would do something, conquest or some victory of some sort, Augustus would have a triumph for Tiberius, because he was trying to set Tiberius up as this powerful guy who would eventually be, a leader. Kind of in the back of his mind, there was a, wait a minute, what if something did happen to both Gaius and Lucius? What if? And so what's going to happen is eventually, well, we'll see how that plays out. But he's going to end up, Augustus is going to end up eventually adopting Tiberius too. Okay? He had adopted these two, and Tiberius is adopted as son and heir. Now, the Julio-Claudian family tree gets really tricky. I mean, the branches are just going off into all directions and sometimes coming back and, kind of swirling around each other. But Tiberius is then adopted here at some point as son and heir, because Gaius and Lucius are going to both die before they're able to succeed Octavian. Tiberius is then required, though, because they want to make sure that the succession is not in question. So Tiberius is required to adopt his nephew, okay, the son of his brother Drusus, as his heir. Okay? So in other words, they're trying to cover all bases. If Lucius and Gaius die, okay, we got it covered. Tiberius dies, okay, we got it covered. Germanicus is also a war hero. I mean, he's captured a lot of territory. He's a soldier, and he's gonna be Caligula's father eventually. Yeah.
So is Gaius and Lucius adopted by Augustus?
Yeah, Augustus. Yeah. Because what happens is Augustus needs heirs to the throne, and hang on. See if okay, maybe not. Okay, guess I have it the way I want to do that one. All right. Well, anyway, yes, Augustus adopts, because he doesn't have a son, he adopts his grandsons, both of them, just in case. Okay. Turns out, as they grow up, both of them are going to die before Octavian. So at some point in there, Octavian or Augustus is going to adopt Tiberius to make sure that that there's a seamless, powerful, or seamless transition of power. Okay. Now, Tiberius then, in order to continue that, adopts Germanicus. Don't get too bogged down in the weeds with the Roman family tree. especially with these guys. Let me go back to it for a second. I showed it to you briefly and passed it by because there it is. Okay.
Oh.
This family tree is very full. This is probably the best one I've found as far as an image goes for the Julio-Claudian family tree, because you've got very clearly, they've highlighted, put a picture of Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. And you kind of see how they're related if you take time. Don't worry about knowing all this stuff. It's not important for our purposes. But if you go back up here, say, to, okay, Vipsania. Okay, no wonder I can't pronounce her name. Okay, right there. Tiberius, first wife, okay? And then he's going to have a child with her. Now this child right here, Drusus, is going to be important. He also has a brother, Drusus. And again, don't want to get into the weeds about that. Anyway, you're going to have some of these people, though, who are going to be extremely important. Because when we look at Tiberius, we're going to have to see here that his adopted heir is Germanicus. Okay? Germanicus. And from this point on, it only gets more confusing when you're looking at it. If you follow the dotted lines, I mean, who's going to come after? Claudius adopts Nero. That's going to be his adopted heir. Now, Caligula is not going to have a dotted line going to him as his adopted heir, because Caligula is going to be proclaimed, and we're going to see how that happens. See, Claudius the same way. Claudius is going to be proclaimed. No one adopted him as the heir. So the dotted lines, the dark dotted lines, and see down here, if you're paying close attention, if you're interested, if you're paying close attention, you look at Tiberius, and there goes the dotted line down to, okay, Gaius and Lucius, okay? These are going to be the guys. That actually, I think that should be a G instead of a C, but okay. You're going to have the two grandsons down there. Okay, so anyway, you can fiddle around with this family tree all you want to, you know, whatever you want to do with that. But anyway, I just put it up there because I think it's interesting. You don't have to memorize it because God knows I'm not going to memorize it.
I'm just looking at their structure. If they're all miserable or going about to go crazy.
Yeah, and I wonder, yeah, I know, it's true. All the pictures and portrayals of people in the old-timey days, a lot of times they do look kind of rough, don't they? They look kind of upset or something. I know once photography came about, why that happened was they would tell you to just sit there because it takes so long for the picture to take. They would tell you just sit there, don't try to smile because you'll look crazy. But they would tell you to just sit there. I don't know about those guys. Now, we have Tiberius adopting Germanicus then. So, Gaius and Lucius, they're going to be gone, and Tiberius ends up becoming emperor in 14. Okay, so again, Tiberius is, I really need to clean this up. I just actually did some of this the other day, this newer version. But Tiberius is going to become the next in line. Okay, upon the death of these two and the adoption of Tiberius. Okay, now you can go back and figure that out. So he becomes emperor in 14, and he never seems to be particularly happy. Remember I started out saying Tiberius never wanted to be emperor? He never aspired to that. It wasn't on his radar. It would be like if I ask you, one of you in here today, do you aspire to be king of England someday? You'd say, okay, yeah. Okay, that was, as far as it seemed almost from Tiberius, because there were levels of people in between him. But he starts to get even more and more depressed with his position and the fact that he can't get out of it. So by about 22, he had started sharing his authority with his son. Okay? Now he does have a son. He does have a son. Okay, that would be automatically then his successor. That's why he's sharing the authority. Why had they adopted Germanicus then? Well, they didn't know what was going to happen to Drusus, right? They didn't know that Drusus is going to be, well, by 23, Drusus is going to be dead. Same thing with Gaius and Lucius, you just don't know. That's why he had to adopt Germanicus. So, Tiberius had, if you recall from the family tree, Drusus was the product of the marriage that he had with the wife that starts with the V that he actually loved, okay? So he loves his son Drusus. Drusus dies. Tiberius is heartbroken. He's not going to work to find an heir because at that time, too, Germanicus is going to be dead at some point around here. Now, Tiberius, though, by 26, is going to retire from Rome. Okay, he's going to go back and say, you know, I've had enough of this. I want solitude. So he goes to a beautiful island called Capri. I've had students that have been there that have actually been to where Tiberius lived on Capri. And they've shown me pictures and I've looked it up and stuff. Beautiful. And you can only imagine if you go there how much more beautiful it would be. So if he's going to retire somewhere, that's the best place to go, just about. Now, what we have here is Tiberius has a trusted general named Sejanus. Okay, Sejanus is a trusted general. He is a leader. He has worked in the imperial family here for about 18 years at this point, almost 20 years. He became the Praetorian prefect. Now, I'll give you a couple of things about that. Okay, Praetorian, these guys are going to be the Praetorians, the Praetorian Guard. These are going to be the emperor's special military. Okay, they're sort of like, but please don't call them this, sort of like the Secret Service, but you know, they're the protectors, remember, of the emperor, the Praetorian Guard, the protectors of the emperor. They do the emperor's will and so on and so forth. Now, the prefect, that's a very British term, at least today it is. If you've read Harry Potter, okay, if you've read Harry Potter, somewhere in there, you had Percy, one of Ron's many red-haired brothers. Percy became a prefect at Hogwarts. And you had Ron looking in the mirror of whatever I can't pronounce there, where you see what you really want. And he saw himself with the Quidditch cup, and I'm wearing the whatever of a prefect, and so on. Okay? So this is an honor. This is a very high-ranking position, kind of the leader of the Praetorian Guard. So he's trusted. He could not have gotten that position without the trust of the family. Now, that's part of what makes this whole thing even worse. Okay? Because, yeah, I didn't put that part on there yet. All right, so let me just tell you this part. I don't have it on the PowerPoint. Sejanus is going to be taking care of the things on, you know, in the capital of Rome, while Tiberius is over there on the island of Capri doing all sorts of terrible things. Now, Sejanus believes that he should be the next in line to have this power. Sejanus sees that at this point in time, there's somebody standing between him and that position. Who's that? Besides Tiberius, it is
Claudius?
I'll wait because it's up there.
Okay.
Jermaine?
No, because he's dead by now.
Okay.
Tiberius' son?
Yeah, Drusus. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he died.
He did. But Sejanus killed him for the reasons that I'm telling you now. Sejanus had been in a position of power for a while, okay? And as he was rising up in the ranks, Sejanus was getting increasingly jealous of Drusus. Sejanus was getting to the point where he really wanted to do away with Drusus, and he did, okay? Now, what happens after that? Now, again, he mysteriously died. Well, we find out later in the story, telling it like it's a novel, but I mean, kind of, it's like a novel, because it's history, it's us, right? So he finds out, Tiberius finds out later that his trusted general, his friend who had been taking care of Rome in his absence, had killed his son. And what they do, and the different historians have different, slightly varying tales about this, okay? The one that I like to tell goes something like this, okay? Tiberius invites Sejanus over for some sort of supposedly a feast in his honor, okay? After Tiberius finds out that Sejanus has killed his son, he invites him over for some kind of a feast. Does that sound normal? No, probably not. So you know something's up. So they're there and they're having their party, whatever, and Tiberius comes to speak. Okay, and again, there's details that differ, but Tiberius is going to be telling, and I'm paraphrasing like I do, but you get the gist of it. Tiberius is going to tell the room and Sejanus himself, he's going to say how hard he had worked for his family for 20 years and how long and he had served in just these endless days, and he's going to go into this whole speech about how he was such a trusted man in the empire. I don't think he called it an empire, but he go. So, when Tiberius had said all of that, he says something to the effect of, and that's what makes it so difficult to believe that you killed my son. Uh-oh, that's not okay. So, Sejanus is going to escape. He's going to take off on the run along with his supporters. They're going to be hunted down. They're going to be killed. Okay? Now what? Germanicus is dead. Drusus is dead. Sejanus is totally dead now. Okay? What are we going to do at this point for an heir to the throne? Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. First, let's finish up what I've pieced together here. I had mentioned that Tiberius was a strong general. I kind of mentioned that in passing. I see what I was doing here. I was leaving room for some word charts or pictures or something. Anyway, they need to be in order though. Of the ones that came after Augustus, out of this mess of Julio Claudians, probably Tiberius was the most capable, maybe the smartest of the group. Before he became emperor, he was the general. Before, when it came time that he thought he might become emperor, remember Augustus was putting on the triumphs for him and so on. But Augustus, remember, was the guy who came back from the Battle of Actium. He came back sole leader of Rome and went in as Princeps Senatus, leader of the Senate. A year later, he says, I'm going to quit. And remember what the Senate does? No, don't quit. We want you to stay. And they give him the title of Augustus. If Octavian had gone in there and said, I demand you give me more power, they would have said, no, that's dangerous. Remember, he's able to manipulate people. So, Augustus is able to be kind and generous and still have people under his control because of his charisma and his personality. Okay? You see, okay, how many of you have ever worked in a daycare? No, really? Okay. Okay. How many of you have ever worked in a daycare and liked it? That's a whole different group. Okay, so the way that I explain that in this context is I worked in a few when I was in college, among other things, and I was never the type that could get the kids to just listen to me because I wasn't very much for discipline, and I'd just get on the floor and play with them, and then all of a sudden mayhem would break out, and actually it's illegal now, but I had 22 4-year-olds. When I worked at the YMCA daycare out in San Francisco, I had 22 4-year-olds. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. But anyway, what I would end up doing, and this is why I immediately didn't want to work in any more daycares because I love children and I do not wish to hate them, was I would be in there and I would say, okay, well, let's calm down. Children, want to play? Here's a marker. Truck. Can you sit down, please? If you don't sit down, and then it would progress, okay? And you have other people working there that could just be like, oh, children, come here. Here's a piece of straw. And they'd be like, I'm like, what are you doing to those kids? Are you hypnotizing them? I'm not cut out for dealing with, there's a reason why I teach grown-ups, right, okay? So, I think of Tiberius as kind of me, okay? He's trying to be nice to the people of Rome and the people under him in some cases. Now, again, we're going to hear some dark sides of Tiberius. But he's trying to be maybe generous and kind, but they're just like going on about their business, and he's like, look, things are getting out of hand, everybody, let's rein it. And they're still going, hey, everybody, stop. Oh, well, maybe I better kill a few people to settle them down. Okay? So, yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay? Now, I never, for the record, killed any children. But, you know, yelled at them, definitely yelled at them, and really feel bad about that because, you know,
Until
you
you got
never do that.
your own kid.
I got my own, and I can yell at him if I want to. But what we have to do here, though, is we have to distinguish by, well, with Tiberius, he's going to treat his enemies terribly. He's going to kill much of his own family. And we'll go back to the family tree next time and show you some of that. But he's going to kill, really, oh my goodness, he's going to have let's see, Caligula is going to be the only boy that survives from Germanicus family. Germanicus, and then Germanicus is dead. His wife is going to be killed by Tiberius, and his Germanicus's other son. Caligula escaped because he was a little guy, okay, and he didn't, you know, and the girls, there were 3 daughters that escaped. But we'll come back to that when we get to Caligula. Now, he would have to do something more severe. Like I said, he's gonna put people to death if they're not listening to him. Now, he's dark, reclusive, depressed on the island of Capri, and I say for horrible reasons, and then I have an ellipsis, ... Well, the things that we're talking about here with Tiberius is we are pretty sure that he would be called a pedophile today because he had children on his island that there's evidence, at least some historical evidence, that he was perhaps engaging in some sort of sexual activity with the children, but definitely, at least most historians are definite on this, that he would have the kids, you know, prepubescent, right at, you know, 12, 11, 10. He would make them have sex in front of him, those sorts of things. Now, there's a movie called Caligula, which is X-rated, and shows it's, you know, again, it's got its purpose. Came out in 1979. Malcolm McDowell plays Caligula, and it shows the absolute brutality, the excesses, and the craziness of Caligula's reign. But it starts out with his uncle, his great uncle, Tiberius. It starts out on the island of Capri, where you have Tiberius sitting there in the beginning of the movie pretty much. I haven't watched it in years and years and years because one time is all you need for that movie. But he's watching these children. Now, they're not doing anything. I mean, they wouldn't portray that in a movie. That would be a whole other category. But the implication is, and they're also played by actors who are older than that. They're over, you know, 18. But he has them in the little pond over here, and he calls them his minnows and his little fishies, okay? And he's going to tell them what to do. He brings Caligula over to the island of Capri. After he's killed Caligula's mother, and after he's killed his brother, he brings the teenage Caligula over there, and part of that may explain some of Caligula's own mental issues that he's going to have. Now, we'll finish this up by saying Tiberius also, and some of my students who have been there have been taken to this place. Tiberius would have women brought to him, and he would have sex with them, and then when he was done with them, he may keep them a while. He may, you know, be just one time, and he is going to have them thrown off the cliff to their deaths, much like the apophatai from the Greeks, the place of rejection. And again, they say when you go there and you take the tour of where Tiberius lived, they will take you to that cliff where the women were, you know, thrown off to their deaths. So Tiberius is not mentally stable, okay? He was smart, but, okay, horrible things going on with Tiberius. Now, Tiberius is going to, he's going to die in 37. Now, there is a little bit of question as to whether maybe Caligula helped him along. Maybe Caligula killed him, maybe, okay? But Tiberius had not named a successor, okay? So what happens is we're going to end up with this guy, Caligula. Now, we are going to stop here only because Caligula deserves a lot more than like 5 minutes, because he is the prize of this bunch, and by prize I mean totally not the prize, okay? He's the craziest, I think, of the Julio Claudians. Now, here's the other thing before you leave and before you start getting ready to run out and zip out as fast as you can, we need to go over the chapter 6 study guide. I told you we would do that today to get it out of the way. Remember, we skipped chapter 5. Don't let that confuse you. Only thing you're responsible for in chapter 5 is going to be what's on the PowerPoint and what we talk about in class, which will be more than the PowerPoint. Okay, so has anybody got a study guide I can use to illustrate? Because all I want to do is read off the correct ones that you're going to need to study. Okay, thank you. Can I mark in it?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. All right, guys, so I'm going to put this up on the overhead.
I look at some of this picture, it does look like a sociopath, not showing
To
emotion.
Caligula.
Yeah, and you kind of look like he's showing any emotion there.
Caligula is quite a prize. Now, if you guys, I've told people for years, I've told my students for years, I own a copy of that movie Caligula because I heard all my life pretty much that it was the most accurate representation of the horrors of the Roman Empire. And then I was always a little put off by the fact that it was rated X, okay, because that means, you know, pornography. So I was like, I'm gonna buy this movie, I'm not gonna buy this movie. This was years ago. I mean, this was when I still used DVDs and before Netflix was even a thing, except through, I think, probably mail or something. Anyway, bought the movie, it was like $30, right? And so I sit down and I watch that movie, and my head is like cocked over to the side the whole time, going back and forth like, oh, dear Lord. But the first thing I saw that I knew I was in trouble was it came up in the beginning, as you know, the credits are getting ready to go. It says, Bob Guccione and Penthouse Productions presents.
Oh, Lord.
I was like, oh, this really is porn. I was like, oh, dear. And yeah.
Didn't
Now,
make you wonder,
there's-
that's what people in
well,
history
there's
watch.
porn in it, yes. But there's also extreme violence, and again, supposedly extremely accurate, okay? Classic movie in that sense. Now, I did loan it to a student one time. I'm gonna be blunt, because none of y'all are kids and Zach's not here. But I ordinarily don't say this, sorry Fort Knox, but you know, I'm gonna say it anyway. I hope there's no kids there. It's not really that bad. But I loaned it to a student one time, and she said, I really wanna watch that movie, and I was like, all right, here. Go to it, watch it. I said, I'm not watching it again. And she brought it back to me like a day or two later, and she just looked at me. She said, Miss Rigney, she said, I had never seen so many dicks in a movie. Okay, Amy. Anyway, yeah. So it's a little extreme for a lot of people, but it's also very violent because Caligula liked to torture people, have been tortured while he was eating dinner. And so there's one scene, one guy's particularly angered him. Remember, I haven't seen it in maybe 10 or 12 years. Somebody particularly angered him. And so Caligula has the guy's body parts, all of them cut off, like, you know, his business, his privates, has all of it cut off, and you see it flying across the room. And Caligula's like, watching it fly. So if you want to watch that movie, again, go for it. I will even give you extra credit for that. Don't go home, tell your mama, or your girlfriend, or your boyfriend. Don't go home, tell your mama I told you to watch an X-rated movie. But don't tell them that I said, well, you're in college.
Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
Well,
All right.
kidding, well, my parents
So,
watched
it actually is, I mean, it's worth one watch. Okay, that's all I can have.
And then it makes me wonder what
right.
Netflix has it, because I know they.
Yeah, no, it's X-rated. They used to have an R-rated version on Netflix, and I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they cut out all that. All right, anyways, chapter six, here's what we need to know real fast. On chapter 6, page 95, really, Clovis, and that's all. I mean, the Dark Ages, that's too broad. I'm not gonna say, no, the Dark Ages, we know what that is. That's too broad. Oh, no, I'm sorry, at the bottom, the 5 church patriarchs. We are gonna need the patriarchs. I actually give you 4. Actually, you know what, I'm gonna mark that out, because in class, I just talk about the 4 major ones. So if you wanna mark 5 and the 4. Okay, over here on page 96, we need to know Saint Jerome, Saint Ambrose, the Emperor Theodosius, City of God, Confessions, Saint Benedict, Monte Cassino, the Franks, Charles Martel, the Battle of Tours. That's all. Okay, so right here, I'll leave it up here for a moment. If you're trying to write it without your study guide, it's not going to happen. You'll just have to get it from somebody. Okay, Saint Jerome, Ambrose, Theodosius, City of God, Confessions, Saint Benedict, Monte Cassino, Franks, Charles Martel, and Battle of Tours. They leave out, where is he? They left out over here Saint Augustine. Okay, then over here on page 97, you need to know Pepin the Short, Charlemagne, donation of Pepin. Then you can skip down about halfway to Carolinian Renaissance, Louis the Pious, Treaty of Verdun, Alfred the Great. And we're not going to talk about Alfred the Great, but he's good to know, he might be on an exam. Okay, Pepin the Short, Charlemagne, donation of Pepin, Carolinian Renaissance, Louis the Pious, Treaty of Verdun, Alfred the Great. Okay, almost done. Page 98. Doesn't look like you need to know anything on page 98. You could probably have an acquaintance with the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles and the Magyars. Magyars are an ethnic group. They're actually going to come up as late as not World War I, but kind of in World War I. You're going to hear about the Magyars again if you're 145 or 105 rather. Okay, feudalism, very big thing that you're going to be so tired of hearing about. Tithing, which you may know if you go to church and give 10%. We're going to see that that's not optional back then. Serfs, thief. I'm also going to write out here, if you can pay attention to what I'm writing beside it, benefice. A benefice or a thief. They're the same thing. They're synonymous. I'm going to use probably both words, but I want you to understand that. Oh, I'm sorry, on this other page, one thing to Holy Roman Empire, because that's going to come up several times. So does anybody, Fort Knox here in person, need a page repeated? Okay, thank you. All right, so I have the slideshow up now for you guys from the Romans, but that Tiberius stuff I'm going to have to correct a little bit. So, Guten Tag, Fort Knox.